We ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until he has finished. It is my pleasure to introduce Mike Bennett.
Hello, everybody. My name's Mike Bennett. I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Rich for having the facility for us and keeping it open so we can have a meeting, and welcome everybody. Dave's so comfortable, he just took his shoes off. He just made himself at home there. So. Good thing he's hygienic. So. And I took my mask off. I feel like I'm at least 6 feet away from everybody, so I won't contaminate anybody. But I'm trying to be responsible, and thank you guys for trying to be responsible as much as you can. Frankie, thanks for reading. That might be the first time you've ever done that, isn't it? Yeah, give Frankie a hand again. First time he ever did that. It's a big deal. That's a big deal. Bob and I were laughing at you the whole time, so. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Gail was asking me, my new friend Gail, she was asking me how often I get to talk, and I get to talk a little more often than some people just because I've been sober and been around a long time, but it's never as fun to talk anywhere as it is at your home group, where you know everybody. And I think that I know probably 95% of the people in the room, and some of you I know very intimately, and it is just a real pleasure to come and talk with people that are friends with me, and that, you know, instead of a bunch of strangers. And my granddaughter's here. I have 9 grandchildren, and my favorite is Briley. So say hi to Briley. I tricked her into coming. We're having like birthday movie night at my house tonight, and when I invited all the grandbabies over, I forgot I was talking, so I had to call their mom and say, hey, I'm giving a talk, so you guys just eat dinner, and then I'll be there for movies afterwards. And I went home to get a cup of coffee because I wasn't sure you'd have any decaf when I got here. And Briley was just on her phone doing what everybody does, and I said, hey, you want to go to a meeting with me? She said, what kind of meeting? Or she said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm speaking. And she said, sure, I'll go. And then she found out in the parking lot it was an AA meeting. I said, well, what kind of meeting would you think it was? She said, I don't know, like a business. I said, why in the hell would I take you to a business meeting with me? So, anyway, it's just fun stuff. So, but I was thinking, as I was sitting there, I'm thinking I don't want to be disruptive while people are reading, especially while we're making fun of them. But I was sitting there thinking to myself, how weird this must be for a 13-year-old girl that's never been to an AA meeting before. You know, you think about this and how strange it must be. But the truth is, if you think about new people, the first time I came to an AA meeting, I was 26 years old, but I felt the same way. I thought this was the strangest thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. It made no sense at all. And I'll tell you about my experience with my first AA meeting. It was a room about this size in a village about the size of Prescott, I suppose. And on the last Sunday of every month, every group or every person from every group in town would celebrate their birthdays at the center hall. You know, they had meeting in churches and stuff all over the place, but they'd all come here to this type of place. It was up in Kennewick, Washington, where I got sober. But they'd come here to take their birthdays. So I show up at my very first AA meeting, and everybody is dressed, not as nicely as me, which most people don't, but everybody's dressed very nicely. Most of the men are wearing like a sport coat maybe and a button-down shirt at least, something nice, and the women are wearing very nice clothes, some of them in dresses, and they're carrying balloons around, and they got packages like birthday presents wrapped and stuff. And the guy that met, the greeter that met me at the door, his name was Dick D, and I got to know him very well later, and we became good friends. But Dick grabs my hand, and he shaking my hand up the stairs to the club, and he asked me, are you new? And I said, no. Who wants to be new anywhere? I didn't want to be new, and I thought, how would he know? The truth is, though, you can always tell a newcomer. You can't tell them much, but you can always tell a newcomer for sure. And Dick could tell, and I even tried to sneak in. I parked my car. I was so ashamed of myself that this is what my life had come to, that I'd wound up in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I found out where the meeting was. I parked my car like a block away, and I was watching. It was dark like this, about this time of year. I got sober in January. And I was watching this little group of people had their cars parked, and they were kind of walking towards the club, and I fell in behind them. They didn't even know I was there. I just kind of snuck in behind them. And I'm walking in with them, and I thought, well, I will just kind of slip in and nobody even know. They won't even notice me. I'll just go in with this crowd. And Dick just spotted me, and he grabbed me in. But he said, are you new? And I said, no. He knew I was new. So he said, well, come on in and sit with me. And he sat me down at a table because we had all these long tables in there. He sat me down at a table, and he went and got me a cup of coffee. And that was like the greatest experience because nobody had gotten me a cup of anything in a long time. People weren't welcoming me back They were asking me to leave, and nobody was being nice to me because of the way my behavior had the turn it had taken. So he got me a cup of coffee, and we just sat there, and I watched all of this happen. I watched these people come up, and they did it in sobriety order, I learned later, because I took birthday cakes there, a couple of them. And they would come up, and the new person with 1 year would have a sponsor, which I didn't know what that was either, but they would light the candle, and they would hold the cake, and they would blow out their candle. Everybody'd sing real quick, and then they'd come up and say something wonderful about God, about their sponsor, about the group, and everything is wonderful. And then they go sit down. And then the next people. Next thing you got 35 and 40 and 45 years, So really a big deal at the end of the month. And I thought, well, this is the strangest thing in the world, because I had been sober for 4 months before I came to my first meeting, and there was nothing to celebrate. It was the most miserable 4 months of my entire life. I was not happy. I could not even imagine taking a cake and a celebration for being sober. There was nothing happy about being sober. It was interesting, when I was young, I started drinking. Well, I didn't start drinking first. When I was about 9 years old, I was on the playground at school. This kid walked up to me with a wadded up sock, and he said, "Here, breathe this in." And I did. And I didn't realize, but I was huffing paint. And I got pretty stoned. I wound up in the principal's office and sent home. But when I got home and I got out of trouble, I was looking for that kid. There was something I liked about that. And I didn't do that very long, maybe a few weeks. And now I had drank before that, but I wasn't really a drinker before that. I was when I was a little kid, one time, well, before that even, my mother and me and my dad, my brother, we would be at the lake in the summertime sometime. My mother drank Slow Gin and 7-Up. Now, that may sound kind of disgusting. I don't even know if they make it anymore. Do they even make that Slow Gin anymore? Could you even buy it? I don't know. But I remember stealing her glasses and sipping it and drinking it, and I just thought the Slow Gin was ruining the 7-Up. It didn't taste very good. And I don't remember getting drunk when I was 5 or 6 years old and, getting married and getting on a plane and going to Vegas or anything. I don't remember any of that happening. I just thought it was strange and it tasted bad. That's all I thought. And then I had my little experience later where I was mowing the grass, around the neighborhood trying to make a few bucks, and some lady paid me my few dollars, and then she made me a sandwich afterwards, and she took a glass of grape soda, poured it half full, and she opened a can of Schlitz malt liquor. Poured it in there, and she gave it to me, and I drank it because, I was trying to be polite. I was a polite little kid at that time, and it was just horrible. Same thing I thought. It just ruined the taste of the grape soda. I'd have just been fine with the grape soda and the sandwich. So anyways, that was my only drinking prior to that, and then I started huffing paint and didn't do that very long. But I didn't take up serious drinking again until I was about, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there. So I was a slow starter. But then I remember being on the same playground where I was huffing this paint, and after I got out of trouble, somebody was smoking weed out on the back of the playground and told me to try it, or invited me to try it, and I did, and it was wonderful. It was one of the greatest experiences I'd ever had in my life, and so I did that for the next year as much as I could, and then I got in trouble, and I got shipped off to Oklahoma. I was living here in Arizona. I grew up in South Phoenix in the foster system. I was with my parents at my youngest memory, and then my very next youngest memory, my brother and I were at a foster home, and I couldn't remember, I didn't know anything about the situation, but I do remember holding my brother's hand. He's about a year and a half older than me. I was holding his hand, and we were in these strange people's home, and I asked him what was going on, and he said, "Don't worry, just stay with me, and everything will be okay." And I just did what he said, and I don't have any other memories of that experience, except sometime later I was back home with my parents, some months later, and then we'd get in a lot of trouble, and they would have the cops after them, and CPS, Child Protective Services, would show up, and they would take us again. And this is the way our childhood went. So by the time I was about 11 years old, he was off in a boys' home, like one of these boys' ranch, I guess, where they just lock you up in a facility for some time, in 6 months, 9 months, or whatever. And they shipped me to Oklahoma to live with some cousins. And it was really a terrific experience, if you want to know the truth. Our house, we would live in a house for a few months until they could run up the light bill and run up the account at the local general store or convenience store. They could talk somebody into a free charge account. They'd run all that up, and then we'd move in the middle of the night. And we didn't move far because we stayed for those of you who know Phoenix, we stayed from McDowell down to Durango, and from I-17 out to about 35th Avenue. That's kind of the area we stayed in, but we were all over that area, and I couldn't tell you how many places we lived. And so finally they shipped me to Oklahoma, and I get out there. And nice thing about there is these people were somewhat stable. They were a little backward. They seemed a little backward. My brother was a gangster. He was running around with the organized gang down there, and I was like his little hang-around, you know. They would let me run around, hang around with them until they were going to do something serious, I suppose, and they'd send me home. And then I would just wander around the streets trying to get home and doing whatever I was doing. And but I got to Oklahoma. And those people had been in the same house, farmhouse, for a long time. All the kids got up every morning at the same time, and they went and they did chores with pigs and a cow and all kinds of goofy shit. And then they would go have breakfast, and it was just normal. Everybody sat around a table, and it was normal, and then they would all go to work in the summertime, which is when I went out there. And then when school started, the adults would go to work, and the rest of them. It was like I don't know if you guys, some of you young guys have ever heard of the Waltons, you know. It's kind of like the Waltons. And I thought it was cool shit. And after a while, I started fitting in. I thought I started feeling like I was a part of things and like I could be part of this family. And I really wanted to stay there. And after about, I don't know how long, I always say 6 months, but I don't know how long really. My uncle sat me down in a folding chair out in the grass in the yard, and he set a chair right in front of me. He's looking right at me. He said, "Michael, you've become a pretty good little worker, but you're too much trouble, and we're sending you back to your parents." And I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. I didn't seem to mind, as I remember, being in that system where, you know, I'm living with my parents and things got so crazy around there that when they would take me away after a while, I looked forward to that. And I didn't mind being in a state facility. I could find my bed, I could find the kitchen, the bathroom. I didn't mind that. Nobody bothered me so much there. I mean, there was a little bit of fighting. You had to stand up for yourself like you would anywhere, but it wasn't anything too serious. And it seemed more secure and it seemed safer to me. I'd get home and it didn't seem that way. And I had gone back and forth there. So when I'd went out there and I just started fitting in and feeling like a part of a family, when they shipped me back, it just turned something off in me where I just didn't want to be like that anymore. I didn't want to try to be a part of anything. And so everything changed. My grades changed, my behavior changed. Everything started changing right then. But while I was out there, interestingly enough, my cousins, none of them did drugs. Nobody was doing smoking any weed, nothing like that. And some of the drugs that exist today didn't even exist back then, I don't suppose. But they drank Coors Light. And they drank it like every weekend. They didn't drink it during the week. Just on the weekend, they would drink Coors Light. And we'd go drive around, and all of us would pile in the back of a pickup, two of the guys in the front, the other four of us in the back, and they'd buy beer, and we'd just drive up and down the strip. It was the dullest thing you ever saw. But when you're drinking, even dull things are fun. So we'd drive up to that end, and we'd look at everybody, and we'd turn around, and we'd drive back, and we'd turn around, and we'd drive back. And we just did that and drank beer on Friday and Saturday night. And they'd whistle at girls or whatever, just the stupidest thing you ever saw. But I didn't give a shit because I was drinking beer. And something happened with me when I was drinking beer, when I first started drinking beer. And we say all the time that people say it as if alcoholics are unique to this, that it's like I felt I had been put into the world without an owner's manual, without an instruction guide. So I was living with all these people, but I didn't really know how to get along, and there were no rules for it, nobody teaching me. So I just felt like I didn't fit in. I felt like I was on the outside looking in on everybody else. Truth is, as it turns out, I have never met a kid anywhere at that age that didn't feel that way. Ever. Every kid I've ever talked to about it felt that way. We all feel weird when we're kids. We're all trying to find our place in the world and mature and grow up. The difference for people like me, and I suppose like you if you're like me, is about halfway through my second can of Coors Light, everything came together and was absolutely perfect for the first time in my life. Absolutely perfect. I felt like not only did I fit in with you, now you had to measure up a little bit to fit in with me. That's how good I felt when I started drinking. Now, if alcohol does that for you, as it did for me, that is what right then diagnosed me as an alcoholic. People have this misconception in AA, and I think we even talk about it and teach you this, which is wrong, that you drink and drink and drink and drink, and enough, if you drink enough for a long enough period of time, you cross this invisible line and become alcoholic. It's not true at all. Never been true. The fact that when I drank, it did that for me. It absolutely changed my perception of reality. Absolutely changed my perception of reality. Because it did that for me, that diagnosed me as an alcoholic, and I chased that feeling from then on, and I never stopped chasing it until it stopped working and my life became so miserable that I had no choice but to seek help. And I'll tell you this, If I could go outside of this room right now and go have a couple of drinks and everything come together and it was absolutely perfect and it didn't set off a physical craving that made me not be able to stop and ruin my life, I'd be out there drinking right now. No way I would be in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, people told me back then, because I was chasing that thing, after a while I got in a little bit of trouble like some of us in this room. And people would say to me, Michael, your problem's drinking. And if you'll stop drinking, your life will get better. And I thought, after enough trouble and everybody's on my ass all the time, I thought, well, I'll try it. So I quit drinking for a little while. And here's what happens to me when I quit drinking. In the beginning, I start to feel a little bit better. You know, I'm not throwing up every day, and I'm eating and I'm sleeping, and so physically I get a little better. Everybody's patting me on the back, telling me what a good boy I am, so I'm starting to feel a little bit better. But after a short period of time, I start getting just a little bit irritable. It's just Frankie, don't bother him. I get a little bit irritable, not bad, but a week or two goes by, and that irritability turns into just being short-tempered with people, and before long, I'm just cranky all the time, and then I start slamming doors. And then I'm throwing coffee cups, and then I'm just stark raving sober. That's what happens to me when I quit drinking. Now, I know those people meant well when they said, stop drinking, your life will get better, but they did not understand one thing. My case is different. There is something different about me. I know it looks like alcohol is the problem. I know it looks like that, but you just don't understand. And eventually it would become absolutely necessary for me to drink again. It was not a choice. It was absolutely necessary. And I would. And when I would drink, same thing would happen. All the pressure was on. Everybody bothering me. They don't like me. I don't care. I take a couple of drinks. You just don't bother me anymore. And I know you meant well. So I'd start drinking again. And in the beginning, it would be okay. I could drink for a period of time, especially when I was younger. Some people I have heard say the first time they took a drink, they became completely physically addicted to it. They couldn't stop, and they drank till they passed out, and they drank like that from then on. And that may be true. It's not my experience. There were several years when I was young that I could drink, and I did not have that physical craving that set off and just drove me into crazy drinking. If there was something that I needed to do that was important, I could stop. If I had to be somewhere in the beginning, I could stop. That invisible line we talk about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is we cross a line where we lost the ability to control our drinking. That's what they talk about, which implies, if you will, that I could control my drinking in the beginning, and I suppose that's true for most of us. At least it was for me. But the day came that I drank so much for so long that I had lost the ability to control my drinking. And then every time I went for that relief, all I wanted, I didn't want to get drunk. People all the time say, well, I just drank to get drunk. I drank to get drunk. I drank for that feeling. I wanted that feeling of absolute perfection, that everything was okay. Problem was later on, I couldn't stop there. I would start drinking. I'd get about halfway through my second drink. Everything had come together, and that craving had already kicked in, and I couldn't stop. I was only going to have 2, maybe 4. Let's not overreact, you know. And then 8. And then I would find myself at 2 o'clock in the morning again, still drunk and in a bar. And Briley and I were talking on the way over here. My first wife, her grandma, she was a wonderful woman. She was a great wife, great mom. And she waited many nights for me to come home. I was just going to stop by the bar and have a drink or two and then come home. And, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd come rolling in. And sometimes I would just pass out right in my truck. I might get to the house, but I'd just pass out right in my truck. Sometimes I'd make it halfway to the front door, and she'd find me sleeping on the front porch, and it was a comfortable place to sleep, comfortable enough. And then sometimes I'd make it in the house, and if I did, I was just, disruptive and noisy, and, it was just a hell of a mess. And she put up with that shit until she got pregnant. And women change a little bit when they get pregnant, and they become more responsible and have babies and stuff. So she tried to get me to quit again, and I quit drinking again, and I stopped. I think the first time I stopped for maybe 3 or 4 months. I don't know really, but it seems like a short period of time. Next time I stopped for about 6, 9 months, something like that. But the same thing happened. I wanted to be a good dad so bad. It was like the thing that I wanted more than anything in this world. I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good employee. I wanted to be all of those things, and I just couldn't do it. The longer I stayed sober, the worse I got, and eventually I would have to drink again, and I would. And finally, she got rid of me, and I wound up drinking that marriage up. She said to me these exact words as I remember. We're in the car driving. She's driving. She's looking right at me, and she said, you know, I would rather take care of all the maintenance around the house. I would rather arrange a babysitter. I would rather figure out how to take care of the kid and work full time and pay all the bills. I'd rather do all of that than to stay married to you. And I'm right there. I mean, she is saying that right to me. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know how to react to this. I'm thinking to myself, well, what the hell am I going to do about that? And then it occurred to me. I mean, I hadn't said anything. I'm just sitting there looking at her, and it occurred to me after a few miles driving down the road, doesn't matter. If she gets rid of me, I can drink like I want to, because all the drinking I'd been doing up to that point was controlled. I was trying to control it so she'd leave me alone, so everybody would leave me alone, because they didn't understand. I really did need it. That was not Frankie that time. So anyways, so she threw me out, and I did just what I thought. I just went and drank the way I wanted to drink. And not long after that, we weren't even divorced. I met another woman in a bar, and she was drinking the way I drank. And I thought, now this is what I really need. I don't need a woman who doesn't drink, you know, and is kind of a good girl. I need a woman who's like me, you know, who drinks all the time, and we'll both be on the same page. And, you know, that didn't turn out so well. Yeah, that was kind of disastrous. And we went along about 4 or 5 years like that, and finally it got so bad that, I mean, we were just destined to divorce or killing each other. It was just so violent. I mean, we didn't beat each other up or anything, but it was just yelling and screaming and door slamming, and it was just bad. It was just bad. And and she was told by a doctor sometime in her life that she could not get pregnant. And about the time we were just about at the end where nothing could be salvaged, she got pregnant. And it changed everything. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this. And so I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good whatever, you know, just a good person. So I tried to salvage the marriage, and she tried to salvage it. And I quit drinking again. And I didn't last very long that time. But then I decided I'm just going to drink until this kid is born. And when he's born, I'm going to like celebrate, you know, here's to you, you know, having a baby. And then I'm not going to drink anymore. And the day he was born, I had a bottle of champagne. I was already drunk, but I had a bottle of champagne. And I took it to the hospital, and I had 2 little nice glasses, and she's had her baby, you know, and gone through that whole thing. And I was there. I don't know how present I was. I was loved in Lamaze, I'll tell you that, in Lamaze class. I was very entertaining. So the first part of Lamaze, you know, you're doing whatever you do in Lamaze, and then I'd take a big gulp with me that looked like a soda, but it was really a big old margarita with very little Rita. I mean, it was all booze. And then at halftime during Lamaze, I stashed a couple of big tall boys out in the truck, and I'd run out there and pour them in my big gulp, and I'd come back. So by the time second half was over of Lamaze, they were pretty tired of me, I promise you that. And but anyway, so she had that baby, and I decided when she had that baby that I was really done. Now this is maybe the 3rd or 4th time that I had quit drinking forever. And I mean forever. I was never going to drink again. I was going to shape up, and I was going to do the right thing, and I was going to toe the line and do whatever it is they tell you to do. And I poured 2 glasses of champagne, and I tried to hand her one. She's laying in the bed, you know, just had a baby. I tried to hand her one. She said, I don't want that. And I said, all right, I'll drink both of them. It didn't bother me, so I drank it all. And I quit drinking. And I made it about 30 days. That was December 25th, actually, when he was born, Christmas Day. And I made it 30 days, and on Super Bowl Sunday, back then, was January 26th. And I didn't know that after I got sober. I had to look it up. But January 26, 1992, and I was in this little business that I had where I was selling stolen merchandise. Something you don't want to do, I've learned. When you go out for coffee and pie with AA types after your first few meetings, don't tell them that you're selling stolen merchandise for a living, because they'll make you stop. And the problem with paying for the merchandise that you're selling is if you pay for it, there's not a lot of profit in it, where if it's just stolen, you got a lot of profit in it. So my profit margins went down steeply after I wound up getting sober and getting around you guys. So, but anyways, I'm in my little business where I'm doing this, and I'm supposed to be open for business. I'm telling everybody I'm working 7 days a week, but this is a Sunday, and I'm not open for business. I went to work, I locked myself inside, and I just started drinking. And at some point, I'm fiddling around in there working, but I started drinking. And at some point, I turned the TV on, the football game was on, and I have no idea who was playing. wasn't watching it. I was just drinking, and I was thinking, and drinking and thinking are two bad things for people like us to do, but I was doing it. And finally, something had changed in me from all those years of drinking. I was 26 years old, so some of you guys are pretty young. Some of you are old as shit, but some of you are pretty young. But I had drank long enough, and I had drank hard enough for me that something had changed inside of me. I had spent the whole day drinking. It was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and my body was drunk. There's no question about that. I was drunk, but my mind, for the first time, was clear as a bell. And I knew that something had changed, something was wrong. I knew I couldn't keep doing this anymore because it just was not going to do what I needed it to do. I knew this was the time. So I didn't swear off. I didn't make any decision. I just thought to myself, as I'm trying to get in my truck and get home, I had about a 40-minute drive home, I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it just be my luck? I finally have quit drinking. I'm thinking this drunk. I finally quit drinking, and now I will get a DUI on the way home the day I quit drinking. So I stopped at a convenience store, and I got the biggest cup of coffee I could, and I just closed one eye and tried to make it home. If you're young and you haven't done a lot of drinking and driving, if you close one eye, all the lines come together, and it does seem a little easier to drive. And it does help, too, if you stick your head out the window. Get a little fresh air going, and you can see where you're going. And if you get to a roadblock, those guys are, especially the ones checking for DUIs, those guys are amateurs. It's okay to yell out, hurry up, get them to speed it up a little bit because, you got things to do, and that is not from my experience necessarily. So anyways, I'm drinking this coffee, and I'm going home, and I don't know what happened, except I look back on it now, and I know that I had finally had some level of surrender, where something had just changed, and I just knew it had to change. And it was not deliberate, it just happened to me, and I was just done. And when I got home, I thought about going to an AA meeting because I had had some experience, not in AA, I'd never been to AA before, but I had a cousin who had been in and out of AA for maybe, I don't know, I'm going to guess maybe 20 years at that point, and he couldn't stay sober. But when he gets sober, he would become very religious, and I'd have to avoid him because I was an atheist, and I didn't believe in God, so I didn't want to hear any of that shit. But when he started drinking again, he was okay, and he didn't talk about that, so I'd go drinking with him, and this had went back and forth. So I knew that he had talked to me about AA. One time he gave me a big book because he had started drinking again. He said, I don't need this, but you do, and he handed it to me, and I took it. Now, why would a guy like me take that? I don't know why I would take it, but I took it, and I just threw it under the seat of my truck, and I didn't think much about it, but I traded a lot of trucks as I went through a lot of cars, but that big book seemed to follow me wherever I went. I never got rid of it. And so I was about 4 months sober from that time. I called somebody that I knew that was attached to somebody in AA when I first quit drinking that day. The next day I called him and I said, Lindsay, I've quit drinking and I'm thinking about maybe going to AA. And it seemed like, this is not real, but it seemed like to me, I'm on the phone with this man, this before cell phones. I just have a regular phone. I'm on the phone with him, and I'm saying this to him. And as I'm saying this to him, now he lives across town, I'm saying this to him, I get a knock on the door. So I walk over the door, I open the door, and he's standing there. So it's like I make this call, and like the AA guy shows up, right? And I know that did not happen, but it seemed like it happened just like that, and very shocking to me. And then he came in, and he just browbeat me about AA. Just told me what I had to do and what I had to do and what I had to do, and he just terrified me. So, and I think he even called his sister and put his sister on the phone from Texas or some shit while we were there, and she was in AA, and the whole thing was just incredibly, well, I don't know what a good way to describe it was, but it panicked me so much that I just decided after I could finally usher him out of my house, I finally just decided that, I've overreacted. I don't need that much help. But it did occur to me that I should keep AA kind of up my sleeve like an ace. I should just keep it there because one day I might need it. And I stayed sober for 4 months without a drink, and I was stark raving sober. And then I got a call that one of my great friends that I had kind of grown up with in my early adulthood, and I drank with him a lot, he had hung himself. And it occurred to me that if his drinking back then, which was more advanced than mine, had led him to that path, my drinking now that I had just had was looking like his drinking back then, and I wonder if that's what's in store for me. And that's the day I made the phone call to the intergroup office, I suppose, in that town, and I asked where a meeting was. They told me, so I went and snuck in that meeting. Well, anyways, I'm in that meeting, and Dick says, just come back tomorrow night, because this isn't a regular meeting, the whole birthday meeting. And he said, come back tomorrow night, and I'll meet you here. So the next night I went back to it, and they had a regular meeting, people sitting around the tables and talking about their dreary little existences. And Josh and I had a fun conversation one time about that right here in this clubhouse. And they were just talking about how dreary, and I felt the same way. I thought, Jesus, there's no way to live. This is no way to live. Come in here and just bitch about your life, and it was just horrible. And I don't think anybody said anything that inspired me or made me feel good. But Dick said, come back the next day. And he didn't say he would meet me. He just said, come back the next day. So I came back the next day, and Dick wasn't there. And I was very disappointed in him because, at least he was somebody that I knew. And I was sitting in that meeting, and I think that I was probably feeling like, this isn't for me. I know that you guys, because everybody kept talking about God, and I was an atheist, and you guys seem to need this, but this does not seem to be what I need for what's wrong with me. And about the time I was thinking that, it got to this old timer, and he said, if your problem's drinking, stop drinking, and your life should get better. When that basket comes around, put a couple dollars in it and leave. Tap dance down the road and enjoy a happy life. But if when you quit drinking, your life gets worse, maybe we can help you. And it was like a banana fell out of my ear. For the first time in my life, I thought maybe somebody understands how I feel, because that's what I've been thinking this whole time. Drinking is not my problem. Drugs are not my problem. My problem is being sober without them. I just couldn't stand reality sober. And so I would like to tell you that I was a great, little Boy Scout AA, and I ran up to him after the meeting and asked him to be my sponsor, but I didn't. I was standing in the very back corner, and because I'd already figured out you guys are going to, hold hands and shit and say prayers and stuff, and I wasn't into any of that, so I just kept myself over there. And soon as the thing started, when they said, well, let's all do what we do, then I just took off. And almost got to my truck, and this old guy that had said that caught me at my truck, and he said, hey, wait a minute, let me talk to you. And I said, okay, what do you want? He said, do you have a sponsor? I said, no. He said, good, I'm going to be your sponsor till you can find one that suits you better. Well, I was new enough in AA, I didn't even know what a sponsor was, so I didn't give a shit. Didn't seem so bad to me. And no, I think it was Frankie. I told Frankie one day, I said, Frankie, do you have a sponsor? He said, no, he's brand new to AA. I said, I'm going to be your sponsor. And he said, what is a sponsor? What does that mean? And I had like a deja vu, because that's what happened with me and Mickey. So anyways, he said, I'm going to be your sponsor. Now, here's something interesting. Talk about God working in your life. Remember, I was an atheist back then. Mickey, interesting guy. Been sober 20 years, and prior to that, he had 9 years, 4 months, and 28 days in and out of AA before he finally got sober. And I know that because he used to say he had 9 years, 4 months, and 28 days. He used to say it so much that when he would start to say it, everybody sponsored in the room would chime in. We'd all say, 9 years, 4 months, just to make fun of him. And he loved it because we gave him attention. But so basically, he had 30 years of experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, the last 20 of it sober. And he'd been very active in most of it. But the last few years, right before he met me, he had slacked off. He would still go to meetings, but only his meeting on Tuesday night. He wouldn't go to the club anymore because those people are just, those people. And he didn't want to do that anymore. And his wife got breast cancer. And I've learned that you're not supposed to pray for things for yourself. But his wife had breast cancer, and she was in surgery that week. And she was in the surgery, and I learned this later, that he said a prayer, God, if you'll save her, if you'll just let her get through this, I will get my ass back down to that club, and I will try to put my hand out and help somebody. And that was his first meeting back to the club. And because nobody had seen him in a while there, they were trying to circle up and do all that stuff, and they're saying, Mickey, come stand by me. And they're trying to shake his hand and shit, and he's saying, get away from me. And he just broke through the crowd, and he got to me before I got out. So what an amazing thing. If he'd have just been if somebody had stopped and talked to him for 30 seconds longer, I'd have been gone, and I might never have come back. So I really just believe that he saved my life. I was about 6 or 7 years sober, driving down the road one day from here to Prescott Valley, going down that little hill, kind of towards Dewey, Prescott Valley to Dewey. And it really hit me, the impact of that moment that he caught me at that car. And I started to cry, and I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop myself from doing it, because I finally realized the seriousness, the miraculous timing in that. And it was just amazing. So anyways, he says to me, I'm going to be your sponsor. And I said, all right. He said, but there's some things you're going to have to do. And I said, like what? And he said, well, can you follow directions? And I lied and said, yes. He said, all right, I want you to call me every day. I said, all right, and he gave me his phone number. I didn't ask why, I just did it. And it's funny, how many of you have called your sponsor every day? Just by a show of hands. How many of you have been told to call your sponsor every day and maybe or maybe not ever done it? I don't know. Nobody ever tells you why. And enough years have went by now, and I've sponsored enough people that it's occurred to me that it's not a bad idea to explain some of this shit. It may not hurt to explain why. And so when I ask a new man that I'm sponsoring to call me every day, I try to explain to him the reason that is so we can get to know each other well enough that eventually you will start to feel like you could trust me, maybe, just a little. And you will keep calling, we'll keep developing a relationship, so maybe you'll trust me a little more. And at some point, maybe we will develop an intimate enough relationship that you would trust me enough that if you were curled up in your closet with a pistol in your mouth, you might make that phone call. And it might save your life. So just try it. Do the best you can. If you can't call every day, that's okay. Just do the best you can to try to learn to do that. So when your sponsor says to you, call every day, maybe that explanation might help you understand why that is. He didn't tell me that. He said, just call me every day. I said, all right. And then he said, you have a big book? And I said, yeah. And he said, I want you to start reading it. So I started reading it, and we met like the couple days later. Well, no, that was on a Sunday. We met the next weekend. Talked to him every day. My home group was Tuesday. There's a solution group, so I went to it. And Mickey always said that I was the angriest newcomer that had ever come into AA. Remember, he had 30 years of experience, and he wasn't joking around. He believed that until the time he died, and I was about 14, 15 years sober when he died. And he told me that until he died, that I was the angriest newcomer, even up to that point, that he had ever seen come into AA. And so when I got to my Tuesday night home group that he appointed to me on Sunday, he said, your home group's Tuesday, so just be there. And I showed up, and he said, here, come with me. And we got to the front door, and he said, you're the greeter. And I thought, could you just imagine? All I wanted to do was stab everybody in the face. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't like anybody. When we finally got to write my inventory, he said, I want you to make a list of people that, that you're pissed off at. And I said to him, without joking, do you have a map of the world? And he said, why? I said, circle the son of a bitch. And I wasn't even joking. I didn't know anybody I liked. I didn't like him much, but I was just angry, and I was just bitter. And so he made me the greeter. Now here's the interesting thing. If you're angry and you're not very social and they make you the greeter, I didn't know what to do yet. And I didn't know you could quit AA. Just like that. I also didn't know this if you're new. I didn't know you could sit around here for years and years and years and die right in the middle of this organization, and nobody will bother you. They will let you do it if you choose to. I didn't know that either. So as he's telling me to do stuff, I'm just doing what he's telling me just because I don't know any better. I'm not quite ready to tell him to screw off and quit yet, so I'm just doing what he tells me. So I'm greeting, and it was just a miserable, miserable commitment, shaking hands with people and trying to be nice and simulate some kind of sincerity. Welcome to there's a solution group, and welcome to and I just kept doing it. But then I went to a meeting back at the club a couple days later, and somebody in the meeting said, hey, aren't you Mike Bennett from the Tuesday night meeting? You were the greeter, right? And that made me feel like $1 million. I couldn't believe that somebody recognized me and somebody thought anything of me, because nobody thought much of me for a long time, I promise you. I hadn't slept in my bed with my wife in a long time. I was in a chair. So these people were starting to be nice to me. So I got to where I started liking being a greeter. But that next weekend we got together, and he helped me with these first 3 steps and got me to write the inventory, which was not so hard. If you're having trouble writing your inventory, I wrote mine in 3 or 4 hours like he told me to. And then we met the next weekend, and I did a 5th step with him. And the next weekend I met with him, and he'd given me the directions for writing my 8th step, and we went through that. And he helped me with my 6th and 7th step in between, but I started going out and making amends to people. Now, let me tell you what happened to me when that happened. I came in as an atheist. I'd never went to church one time, all of my life, before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Didn't know anything about it except what you people said and what I saw on television. That's the only thing I knew about church and religion and all that. My biological dad, when I was young, said, stay away from religious people. they're crazy. Now, I know that he didn't mean that literally now, but when I was a little kid, I didn't know the difference. And when he said they're crazy, I really thought when people come up to me and they'd start talking about God and church and all of that, that there might be something wrong with these people and that they could hurt me, and they scared me, and I stayed the hell away from those people. I didn't think there was anything that I needed to do with that stuff. So I got to AA, and I still felt that way. And he said to me, well, he said it that first night, he said, do you believe in God? And I said, no. And if I have to for this to work, this won't work for me. And he said, are you willing to believe in God if I can prove it to you? And I said, well, sure, but you won't. And he said, well, that's good enough. And he was very excited because I had this willingness, you know, and he went on and on about this willingness. And I didn't have any willingness. I was just trying to get him to shut up about it. And the only time I ever had a cross moment with him was at the third step. He said to me that he helped me understand the first and second step, which are interesting, by the way. I'll tell you this just quickly. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash. That dash in our language means end of one thought, I learned later, and beginning of new thought. So there's really two separate things, completely separate things in that first step. And imagine if Bill Wilson would have written it this way. Admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our emotions had become unmanageable. I had this struggle with that word, you know, our lives have become unmanageable. So Mickey said to me, imagine it says, admitted we were powerless over alcohol. You got any problem with that? I said, no. I know when I start drinking, I'm off and going. I can't stop. That our emotions had become unmanageable, and I identified immediately. That's why I needed to drink, because my emotions were unmanageable. And when I drank, my emotions became manageable. I could stand living in my skin when I had a few drinks in me. So I could identify with that. He said the second step, imagine it like this. Came to believe in a power, and he said, I don't care what power you have. You have an issue with God. Do you think I'm doing better than you? And I said, well, obviously. He said, congratulations, I'm your higher power. And I was happy with that. Here is a guy sober 20 years doing better than me that I could look up to and count on. He had some power I didn't have, and that was good enough for me. So Mickey became my higher power. He said, imagine that you came to believe, or you could come to believe, that a power greater than you could help get your emotions manageable again. Imagine that came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to emotional stability. And when he said that to me, I thought, you know what, that is something I would like to have. I don't know if I can come to believe that, but that is something I would like to have. And then he said, just make a decision to join us and do what we do. That's step 3, nothing else. So if you're spending, you know, weeks and months and years with workbooks and work plans and all of that, I don't care if you do that. It's not going to hurt you. None of that stuff's going to hurt you. If you're doing anything that keeps you talking about AA and God and the steps and getting better, none of that stuff's ever going to hurt you. But the first 3 steps aren't about all that crap. The first 3 steps are about just the things I just said. And that's what he said to me. So he started me out on an inventory. So I did that. I wrote that inventory, and when I was driving home from that inventory, interesting thing happened. I didn't write down the things that I had really struggled with. I read in the book that it said you got to get rid of these secrets, you know, in the deepest, darkest cranny of your life, and that you might take to your grave. And so I show up with him, and I got this list, inventory list, and I'm thinking about these things that I haven't written down, and I get with him, and he starts talking to me, and I just blurt one of them out. I was so afraid I was going to drink, and I wanted to stay sober so bad, I blurt one of them out, and I'm in the car with him. And we were in a 72 psychedelic Pinto station wagon, you know, the ones with the little round window on the back? Yeah. Young people are saying, huh? But he knows, yeah. Weird little car, but I'm in the passenger seat of this, and I'm giving him my 5th step, and I said this thing to him that was just the most horrifying thing I'd ever said to anybody in my whole life about myself, and I just started to cry, and I'd not cried since I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I was a tough guy, you know. I didn't cry. You could stab me in the face, and I'd spit on you, you know. I just wasn't going to cry. And but I said this to him, and I was so degraded. I just felt so embarrassed that I had admitted this to somebody, and I just started to cry, and I couldn't control myself, couldn't stop. And it went on for some time, and finally I regained my composure, and he told me a little story, nothing serious, just a little story about my story from his experience and how normal it was. And it changed my entire life. So I told him the next thing and the next thing, and he told me things about him. And then we went on to go through my inventory. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. I'm driving home after that, because he told me to go home, spend a little time contemplating what you've done, before you do your 6 and 7 step. And so I'm driving home, and I got a little bit of a drive home, and something occurred to me. Well, something just happened to me. And I used to say it was this fantastic spiritual experience that changed everything for me. And I look back on it, and I know now that that's not true. What happened was I experienced peace and serenity and a feeling of being worthwhile, a feeling of hope. I had never in my life one time ever even scratched the surface on any of those feelings. Life was a battle. And if you were going to win, you had to be tough and you had to fight. And when you got knocked down, you kept fighting and you kept fighting. And eventually, you fight your way into something, some type of an existence. I had no idea it was like it is. So I'm driving home and I just had this wonderful experience that everything was going to be okay. And I thought it was a great spiritual awakening. And maybe it was. I don't know. But really, the truth in it, it was just that. I was just at peace for the first time in my life. And it occurred to me, what if those guys are right? Because I never felt this good. What if they're right? What if there is a God? What if there is a God? I told you before, the only cross word I ever had with him was at the 3rd step. He wanted me to get down on my knees and say a prayer with him at the third step prayer. I said, I'm not doing that. I mean, I recoiled like from a flame. I'm not doing that. And he said, what do you mean? You agreed to follow directions. I said, I don't give a damn what I believed. I told you I don't believe in God, and I'm not doing that shit. And I mean, I got like serious about it. And he said, well, he didn't know what to do with me. I was just a mess. He said, well, shit, will you just read it? Will you just read the damn thing out of the book? I said, why? He said, so you can just say you followed the directions. God damn it, And so I read it. I read the 3rd step prayer, and I just did it with gritted teeth. I just hated reading it. It was the most embarrassing thing. Then I slammed the book shut, and I said, it didn't do a goddamn thing for me, And he said, let's just move on. And a week later, I'm driving down the road, and I'm thinking to myself, what if they're right? I wonder if there is a God. Now, I'd like to tell you that I had this big upheaval in my life and everything changed and I believed in God and joined a bunch of religions and shit, but that didn't happen for me. I started going to church. I even got baptized because I thought, what the hell, wouldn't hurt, right? I got baptized. And I started studying religion, and for the next 15 years, that's what I did. If I wasn't working or in an AA meeting or doing something with my family, I was reading something. I was reading the Bible. I was reading the Mormon Bible. I was studying Judaism. Went to the Buddhist temple for a while, the Jewish synagogue. I just tried everything. I was trying to find my place. And 15 years sober, I was so tired. Not like exhausted from AA. I loved AA. But I was so tired from reading spiritual stuff, religious stuff, I finally realized they're all the same. There's nothing different in any of them. Now, once you got all the man-made rituals that divide them, and the greed and power takes them. But the core message in every single religion, including Alcoholics Anonymous, is this: total forgiveness, total love, total understanding and compassion. That's the message in every religion in the world, and that's what AA preaches. That's what AA tries to help us find. Once I realized that, I just said something like this. I didn't say a formal prayer, but I'm sure I said something like this. God, it was like Forrest Gump. You know how he ran across the country, didn't have his answer, so he ran back, and he didn't have his answer, so he ran back. And that was me reading. I was just running back and forth across the country for 15 years, and finally, I was tired. Still didn't have an answer, but I was satisfied with the fact that I didn't have to have an answer. So I said something, I'm sure, like this: God, whatever I am supposed to know, I'm going to wait for you to tell it to me. Until then, I'm just going to be the best AA I can be, the best member of Alcoholics Anonymous I can be. And that's what I resigned myself to. Now, funny thing is, 3 years later, I did have a spiritual awakening finally. And if you're new, it only took 18 years. So there's some hope for you. Yeah, hang in there, baby. It's right around the corner. But when it did happen, it was overwhelming, and it was all at once, and I became aware of a reality that I'd always existed in that I never knew. I didn't know anything about it. I just became aware of it all at once. The whole picture, I became aware of it. And I had a personal relationship with the God close to me, and everything was okay, and everything's been okay from then. So for the next 3 years, I'm living my life like that. My son that was born on Christmas Day way back when, who Briley knew, her Uncle Gus, he was the greatest kid you ever saw in your whole life. If he came to my house, he wouldn't come in my house without kissing me on my head. He wouldn't leave without kissing me on my head, and if he was coming in and out, taking my food and washing his clothes and shit a lot, he kept kissing me on my head. So I said, God damn it, quit it. Get away from me. He just loved me. He was just a good kid. He loved all the grandbabies. He loved everybody. He was just a good kid. He was going to college at South Alabama with the girlfriend that he had met, and she was going to college there, and they were falling in love, and they just put their relationship on Facebook, and it was the first time he'd ever really met a girl and had any kind of relationship, and it was wonderful, and he was the greatest kid you ever met in your whole life. And he was, her ex came to the college and shot both of them and killed them. Shot him 5 times and shot her 8 times, and then he shot himself in the head and killed himself. So he just killed everybody. Everybody was gone. I was 6 hours away from home when that happened, and I got a phone call from one of my other children to tell me that that had happened. And I want to share with you my reaction. My very first absolute knowledge was that Gus was okay. And I knew that with every ounce of my being, that that boy was okay. I knew this was going to be hard for the family and hard for me, because I wasn't done playing with him yet. I wasn't done being with this kid and watching what he could become. But I knew he was with God, and I knew he was okay. My second thought, I think more importantly, was BJ was the name of the boy who had committed the murder. BJ had sat at my dining room table the year before at Thanksgiving. I knew this boy. All of my kids were friends with him. They were all friends together. My second thought was this: I wonder how badly that boy must have been feeling to take an action that severe. How badly must he have been hurting inside to take an action like that? Then I had to make my phone calls. I had to call my sponsor and tell my sponsor. Well, I called my wife first and asked her what she was doing. And she was 6 hours away too, so the other kids loaded her in the car and they drove her north, and I'm driving like an idiot south. So we can just get together. And then when we did, my wife got in the car with me so we could be together. We all went home. And so I called her and we made those arrangements. She's coming, and now I'm driving on the road. I got 3-4 hours driving by myself before I get to my wife, and I called my sponsor. And some of you guys know Clancy. He's been here several times, and some of you know him personally, and Clancy was my sponsor. Then I called him, I told him what had happened, and he was very compassionate and understanding, and he talked with me for a while. And once he figured that we'd talked as much as we could talk about it, I still had to call that boy's mother. I still had to make that phone call, because she didn't know, because my wife was his stepmom. So I get ready to get off the phone with Clancy, and he said, Michael, listen to me. Whatever you do, don't you become a victim. You got other children that are counting on you. You got grandchildren counting on you. Your wife's counting on you. And you got all the people that you sponsor counting on you to set a good example. And you need to set that good example. So don't you become a victim. And he hung up. And I don't think I could have gotten better advice from anybody in this world. Could you imagine a better excuse? Nobody could blame me, could they? Nobody could blame me for falling into that victim role and everybody feeling sorry for me. And it would have killed me. And I had a good enough sponsor to tell me, don't you become a victim, and call me every day. And I started calling, because I only called him once a week. I started calling him every day. And I made that call to the boy's mother, and you can just imagine how she took it. And then I met my wife, and we went on. A couple days later, I'm out of time. I'm going to finish up 30 or 40 minutes. No, just kidding. I'm going to finish up right now. A couple days later, we're in Mobile, Alabama, that's where I'm living. A couple days later, we have a service for my son. And there's a few neighbors, that in our area, a few people that knew him from school, not many, but there were 250 people from AA showed up at my house. And they all brought food. I mean, you could imagine the food came. But there were so many people in our house that we had a long middle room, like a dining room, living room area, and it was long, it was big. It was just shoulder to shoulder people standing there. They were crammed into the kitchen. They were all the way down the hallway. They were back in bedrooms. They were out on the porch with the doors and windows open so they could hear. And that's the type of love that is in Alcoholics Anonymous that had developed for us there. We had that service that afternoon. We went to the girls' service because she was my son's girlfriend. He loved her. I mean, he had absolutely fallen in love with her, and I would think that that's what he would want us to do. So we all piled in there, and there's still 250 people at my house. So we just appointed somebody in charge. You've been sober long, the rest of them, you're in charge. And we left. And we went to her service. And we're sitting there, and you think, things could always get worse, right? Things could always get worse. Nobody wants to hear that shit. But I'm at her service, and we're in this long church, and it's divided like churches are, and there's people on the side. And we're sitting over here, and somebody nudges me like this and says, they don't know who I am, They said, do you know who that lady is in the front row right there? And I said, I suppose it's, the girl's name is China. I suppose it's China's mother. And he said, yeah, she's lost 5 children in 5 years. Lost 1 kid each year for the last 5 years, and finally China. And I thought to myself how lucky I was. How lucky I was that I had such a deep faith that I knew Gus was okay, that he was with God, that I could have some compassion for the boy that did it, and that I could understand that things could be worse. And I felt so lucky. My wife and I both looking at each other with that same feeling. And we left that service, and I started going back to meetings right away. And I sat meetings, and I cried. I could not talk. I cried for 45 days. I'm just trying to have a conversation with you, and I'd start crying. And then I'd have a conversation with him, and I'd start crying. I just couldn't quit crying. I'd wake up at night and cry. I just cried for 45 days straight. I could not stop crying. I don't even know how could you cry that much. I don't even know how you could. But I wasn't crying like, I never got angry. I've never been mad at anybody. That's what it took for me to just get through it and to live through it. Today, I'll tell you this. What saved my life is Alcoholics Anonymous. What I learned here is what taught me to live the life that I live today. Today, I know for me to be of value, I have to act like I have value. When I'm at a AA meeting, I do the same thing my sponsor did. If I see somebody new that doesn't have a sponsor, or somebody I think might not have, I ask them, do you have a sponsor? And if they say no, I offer to be their sponsor. I know that a lot of people sit around AA and say, well, I would sponsor people, but nobody asked me. Well, why don't you try? Why don't you make an effort, to welcome them? Dr. Bob and Bill, when they met, neither one of them sat around waiting for somebody to ask them, did they? They sat around waiting for people to ask them. We'd all be dead right now, wouldn't we? Dr. Bob says to Bill, he said, Bill, this thing's going pretty good for us, but if we're going to keep it, maybe we should get busy. Bill said, I agree. And he called the hospital up there that he was working at and said, hey, you got any wet ones? Because I think we've got a solution for it. And she said, well, have you tried it on yourself? And he said, yes, you smart ass. And she said, yeah, we got somebody. And a couple days later, they went up and talked to that man, and he stayed sober. And that was AA number 3. And that's how this thing began to grow. So if you're new, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. There is hope for you, even if you're as bad as me. There's hope for you. And if you've been around a while and you're not as happy as you'd like to be, maybe walk up to a newcomer at every meeting you go to and just ask them if they have a sponsor. Thanks. I must escort myself.
Thanks, Mike. So, let's thank Mike once more.